Welcome to General Counselling, the podcast from Montresor Legal. If this is your first time with us, it's a simple premise. We bring together a leading in-house lawyer and a law firm partner, and each episode look at a different area of the economy to share stories of how lawyers can add value to their clients and develop their own practices and careers. Before we start, a quick plug for my colleague Holter Loku's brilliant new podcast series that runs in parallel with General Counselling, Diversity in Leadership. On the series, Holter is joined by lawyers from underrepresented groups who've made it to the top of the legal profession, who share their career journeys and advice for anyone with an interest in the diversity and inclusion agenda. Holter's got some great guests lined up, so to get future episodes, hit subscribe. Back to today. Now, I know I always say this, but I am really excited about today's subject, renewable energy. Renewables is such an interesting field. It's not just because climate change, breaking our reliance on fossil fuels, is the defining challenge for our generation, or that it gets so much attention from government, investors, and the media. For me, renewables is a fascinating area because it's so positive, full of human ingenuity and innovation, harnessing the best of individuals, business, and government to make a positive impact for us and future generations. At a time where we all could do with a bit of positivity and to look beyond COVID, it's the perfect topic. And I'm excited as I have two absolutely brilliant guests. From the client side, we're joined by Cubico Sustainable Investments, Olga Garcia. Olga has been part of the management team at Cubico since 2015, back when the business was incubated at Santander. She's now the General Counsel and Head of Corporate Affairs and the Executive Committee member responsible for all legal compliance, communications, and HR. She's seen Cubico go through a phenomenal period of growth to become one of the leading players in renewable energy globally. Now owned by two of the largest Canadian pension funds, Ontario Teachers and PSP, Cubico develop, run some of the world's most exciting wind, solar, and transmission line technology projects across Europe, North and South America. Welcome, Olga. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Thank you.
From private practice, we're joined by Latham Watkins corporate partner, Sam Newhouse. Sam is widely regarded as one of the rising stars of the M&A world, with a particularly strong reputation for his work in the energy sector. His move to Latham from Freshfields in February last year made headlines in the legal and traditional press, which doesn't always happen, as a marquee hire for Latham in London. Recently, Sam has been involved in a number of high-profile renewables deals, including electric vehicles, gas, and sustainable certificates. And recently, Sam was part of the Latham team advising India's largest renewable energy business, Renew Power, on its $8 billion combination with RMG and proposed NASDAQ listing. Sam, great to have you on General Counselling. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Tom.
Perfect. So let's start on the renewables market. Olga, first one for you. What's the most exciting thing for you about working in the renewables sector right now?
Well, what is not? No, I think it is one of the most exciting sectors, as you were referring to in the introduction, to be working on at present, without any doubt. So it's an industry that is growing very fast, and that is actually, you see, you're having a positive impact now in the world. So the effect of climate change is undeniable. We have this very challenging target of 2050 decarbonization. And the pace of challenging in this industry to achieve it is and has to be staggering. And to be honest, it's great to be part of the solution. And it is with this aim and with this excitement and drive that Cubico was created, by a group of people that wanted to work in a sector with a purpose. That wanted to play a role in the energy transition, and look how much we have achieved so far in these 5 years, and that is what keeps driving us and with huge motivation. We are now a global platform, investing in 13 countries with almost 120 assets, and we are also very excited about the innovation part of it. At the end of the day, it is exciting and innovative in the sense that we need to now devote time to work on storage solutions, for example. Now we are reading everywhere the latest on hydrogen and how this can also make a difference. So yeah, I think it's very few sectors are exciting as renewables at present.
There was an article in the press this morning saying there was a quote from, I think, the International Renewable Energy Agency that put the amount of investment needed to meet the Paris targets by 2050 at 131 trillion. Yeah, there's quite a lot going on.
Absolutely massive. Absolutely, yes.
From your perspective, there's been an awful lot of investment that's come from various different areas. What is the impact of things like the US stimulus that we saw recently from the Biden administration on the work that you guys at Cubico are doing?
Well, I mean, obviously, it is a very positive change to have now Biden in power in respect of his, the support of his government into renewables. Cubico US has around 50% of all our equity investment. So it forms an important part, and we have big plans for the US. A stimulus that helps demand in the economy is always a good thing. We need to know more because the details are yet to come. And but one thing that obviously will be one of the most effective for the US market, in our view, is the extension of the tax incentives. And as you know, the renewables industry in the US is heavily reliant on these tax credits and to compete with cheap domestic gas. So that is what we, as a starter, will be looking at. So good news, all in all.
And Sam, from your perspective, looking at the broader ESG agenda that has been so on the rise recently, what impact have you seen that have on the wider energy industry?
So it's been very interesting, and it's been reshaping so many companies, their outlooks and their sort of forward-looking agenda. And I think in particular, looking at on the energy side, we've had companies who have historically been very carbon-based, looking and rethinking their strategies and solutions and how they're going to be part of an energy transition over the coming years. And for all of those, it's the ESG movement has shaped things dramatically, whether that's investors coming in and saying that they would like their investments to be greener and cleaner, which has put pressure on various companies, whether that's been companies from themselves looking to try and reinvent themselves, which has prompted a huge amount of mergers and acquisitions, people selling off old energy assets, buying new energy assets. And then also just in terms of the governance and compliance of companies who are all different reporting requirements, different governance requirements, have required a huge reset in mindset and forward-looking process to be part of a transition movement. So I think we've seen it across all facets of companies we work with. And very interestingly, it's straying into not just those companies who you would conventionally associate with energy, but actually into all companies as to what's our energy usage, how are we contributing, what are we doing to be part of a transition movement. It's been fantastic, and a real, I think, as Olga says, a real catalyst for change and innovation, which is fun to work alongside.
And do you think one of the things that I know has been reported on a lot is the levels of debt in some of the clean tech businesses, especially some of the sort of newer, less developed ones? Are those levels, in your view, sustainable? Is there something, should we be worried about a green bubble or generally clean tech company valuations that have obviously gone through the roof over the last year or two?
Yeah, my personal view is, and never trust a lawyer in terms of anything to do with valuations. But But my personal view is no, there's clearly been a huge transfer of capital away from like older energy sources and into renewables. But I think that's just allied with, you know, the big political aspirations around the world of carbon neutrality. Investors are following what they see are likely to be the sort of the areas of profitability and growth over the next 5 to 10 years, and are putting their money there to take advantage of it. And also, you'd hope in many cases as well, I think, are deploying their funds to follow a kind of a more ESG route and format. So I think the answer is no, because that is where market and investors want to invest their money. It's a political direction of travel, and with that will behind them, these companies will continue to grow, develop, and ultimately be successful.
And Olga, do you see the route? I mean, you mentioned how important the tax credits are in the States at the moment. Do you see, like, how long is it going to be that government support and subsidy going to need to be in place in order to support and sustain the renewables projects that are going on at the moment?
I think the world has changed. For mainstream projects in wind and solar, it is not about subsidies anymore. I think it is clear that these technologies have now become the cheapest form of generating electricity. So these subsidies, for example, in solar have worked really, really well, and costs have fallen more than 90%, in the past 10 years. And these subsidies have allowed the industry to expand and become more competitive, which is what it was the aim. Things that government can help with providing. Probably I would say in terms of subsidies, as I was referring to earlier, is supporting the continued technology disruption, and areas such as battery storage, as I was saying, where you need some more demand and more projects so that the price of the technology becomes cheaper and more widespread. What else can be done? Well, maybe providing longer-term price certainty for investors who are not used to taking very volatile energy price risk. And probably I would say as well, and very importantly, to issue policies and regulations that support and give stability to the sector. And we are seeing right now how important this is, for example, in countries like Mexico.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would probably summarize it.
So we're at a stage now where it's almost that there are a number of asset classes that the subsidies have sort of done their job, and they're able to replace government support with investor classes from a whole range of different money sources. How much money do you see coming in at the sector at the moment? How exciting is the amount of investment from different sources that you're seeing? Sorry, Sam, do you want to take that?
I'll definitely go with that, although I'm sure Olga has good exposure and good views as well. From the perspective I'm seeing it, it's very interesting because it's all angles. We are on the M&A side, and the sort of venture capital and emerging company side. There's some really fun and exciting technology ranging from batteries to electric vehicles to AI being used to optimize energy usage, all of which is attracting really high valuations and great enthusiasm in rounds. We've seen, it wouldn't be 2021 without mentioning SPACs. We've seen some great SPACs, the Renew Power one that I've just done, but also we've seen ArcLight in the US raising a SPAC and buying Proterra, the electric vehicle company. And so we're seeing new forms of capital coming in that route as well. And I think Olga will be better placed because Cubico have done fantastic things in the financing market as well. But we're starting to see huge amounts of green bonds, green funds, green loans coming in, which are also putting money into different sectors of the sector as well. So we're seeing capital coming in really different layers and at different areas, all of which looking for slightly different things, but all excited by the growth opportunities.
No, I totally agree. I think there is a lot of investors coming in general in the equity markets, but in particular in the renewable sector, there is so much potential, as you were referring to, that is justified. No, there's a lot to do.
Yeah, and the other thing I might add is just simply there's a lot of competition at the moment.
Yes,
I think given how popular the renewables sector is, I think you've had various, with oil majors now, for example, pivoting and looking to increase their exposure there with significant deep pockets, and also the traditional investors looking for the same. You've seen a real focus on quality and value and increased prices coming off the back of it.
It'd be really interesting as well. Like, I know one of the criticisms that they always made of investment banking over the years of, the 90s, the noughties, was that it was just a hoover for young talent of people who were coming through the top universities who were going into investment banking. And I think the interesting thing about this sector is you can see that if that sort of investment's coming in, it's going to be difficult for some of the banks to compete with the opportunities that those sorts of businesses are going to be able to offer young graduates in arguably, depending on who's listening, a more positive and beneficial career path for the rest of us. I think the next thing I was going to talk to you guys both about, which every episode we've done of general counselling, actually we normally started with COVID, and I think now we're in March. I'm actually pleased to relegate it to the second thing we talked about, but unfortunately we're not quite yet out of being able to talk about it a bit. It's obviously just been this unbelievable change in working arrangements, and one of the things that I've been amazingly impressed by, especially amongst the law firms and the accountancy firms, is how they were just able to switch to a fully remote working model while working on these ludicrously complicated and big ticket deals. Olga, from your perspective, how did you feel both your internal legal team and your external advisors coped over the last 10, 11 months?
Well, I think remarkably well, both internally and external firms, I must say. I think the last 12 months have been very challenging for everyone needing to work remotely and adapt to the new situation. But I think the legal sector in particular was well placed and to adapt and actually to thrive, not just survive. And in this respect, in regards to my legal team, I cannot be more proud of the motivated and talented team that I do have, because I'm very fortunate in this respect. They have all thrived, I must say. It is true that being an international company with teams in so many countries has made us use the technology forever in terms of being in touch with our teams and have that remote communication and make it work well. Cubico's management also has paid a lot of attention to keep the interaction between teams, the communications, the engagement, and the motivation of everyone. It has also helped a lot the fact that 2020 for us was a very busy year, and despite the challenges, we have done very well in terms of the business and all the transactions that we managed to close, and that is also a very important motivating factor for the team. Challenges that we had to overcome, I would say probably the major ones, the onboarding of new members, and the difficulty we were talking about it earlier on with Sam, who also onboarded while on lockdown. That was a challenge. I had to also onboard team members, and it's more difficult, obviously, to promote the culture, the learning, and to get those people engaged and included in the team. Keeping the engagement, again, as I was saying, when we were working long hours with video conferences, that is exhausting, as we have all realized. So how you keep the energy levels and the creativity up with the teams, it's been a challenge. But overall, they've done wonderfully, I have to say. And the same with the external law firms. I think they have shown great resilience. They have adapted to the situation very well. They have organized conferences. They have found ways to follow up and engage with clients. And this traditionally was being done a lot through the social events, no? That you were catching up with your clients, and that could not be done anymore. So I've seen firms putting in place again innovative means to do this, and in my case it has worked very, very well. I guess also for the firms, the challenge, I'm sure it has been, and I wonder how they have managed and done the training, of the juniors or the trainees, and how they were able to cope with the learning curve during this year.
So yeah, Sam, a couple of questions there. One, how on earth do you develop clients when you can't take them out? Which is probably the biggest thing for someone who's having to move his whole practice.
Good question. You tell me, Tom and Olga. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you're someone who's moved from a very well-established Magic Circle firm to a top US firm in the middle of lockdown. I mean, how hard was that?
So look, on the one hand, it was very hard in that what you really want to do is be out meeting people in person, and both clients, new colleagues, both internationally and also just your team effectively as well. But actually, I think when you sort of paused and thought about it, actually, there's a huge amount of kind of positivity and innovation you can bring to it if you approach it with the right mindset. And I think actually Zoom has caused, I recognize a lot of the things Olga's talked about, but Zoom has actually been a pretty efficient way of meeting a huge amount of people in a very short space of time. You can travel the world in a week. You don't need a sort of one long trip to California to meet a couple of people who might be away from their desk. You can say hello to everybody, meet people, bring people together very easily. And actually, I think there's a huge amount of positives you can take out of it. I think I've been fortunate in that I've joined a team that has a huge sort of cultural depth to it. And I think what's really been shown at this time is if you had an organization where the culture was strong, the team ethos was strong, people broadly got on with each other, I think, or there or thereabouts, actually this storm has been weathered pretty well, and given people the opportunity to come up with new ideas as well, some of which will survive, some of which won't. But so all in, actually, when you look at it with a glass half full, it's been a pretty positive experience.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely going to be some things that survive this. I think, Olga, you were saying, I guess a lot of what you're doing, if you're managing a project in a different country with advisors in different parts of the world, running things on Zoom is a pretty standard part of how that deal runs anyway. I think there will be positives that we can take from this in terms of connectivity and how quickly you can move things. And I think when this sort of the biggest negative really is the sort of mental health pressure and the training pressure on some of the juniors. Yeah. And I think when that starts to dissipate because people are able to come back, there will be things that we look back on saying that, we'll absolutely move forward by the pandemic. But that's for me what I've seen in our team and talking to lots of lawyers. The downside really has just been, I think, Olga, you mentioned it, how you just keep people engaged and motivated and happy in an environment where you can't just go for coffee with them and have a chat and have a moan or have, whatever you're going to do them if you're in the office with them.
No, and I think, sorry, just to finish up on that point, I think even though we all realized that this remote working have worked well, despite obviously all the difficulties, I think we also realize how important it is, the contact and the face-to-face interaction, and the personal interaction. So even though, remote working will not totally replace working in person in an office. I believe we will need to find that balance, but I think also everyone is looking forward to coming back to the office and eventually and meet their colleagues.
Yeah, I don't buy the idea that there's going to be materially less business travel globally. I mean, as well. I mean, I think
Yes.
people want to do it, and it is an important part of developing relationships and networks. And you can't, as you say, you can't do everything via Zoom. So yeah,
Mm.
look, bring that on, I think. I think that the next topic I had on the agenda is you guys are both people who have reached partnership at a top firm, who like the top of the in-house tree at a really exciting business. And irrespective of what stage people are at their career, I'm sure you've got super interesting things to pass on. Before we go on to that, one of the things I've noticed recently is how the role of the in-house counsel has developed and changed over the last 5 years. And I think especially with with people who might be in a law firm at the moment who are thinking about whether they might want to go in-house. Olga, how do you see the role of what your team do for your institution has developed over the last few years?
Mm. No, that's a very good question. Well, in several ways, but I would say in terms of the operating model of how the in-house legal teams work. I think there has been an evolution, and for sure, all the legal teams that I have led, and this in particular. I think now the legal team is required to be a business partner. It's required to build greater agility and efficiency to cope with the different crises. And so as risks of the business increase, I think the legal teams and the GCs must find ways to better manage them. And to do it on the top of that, to do it at with highest efficiency, at a lower cost, and decreasing resources, which is the challenge that we all face. So it's kind of doing much more with less. I think now the in-house counsel is required to think more strategically, to spend less time to maybe draft contracts, review contracts, and here I think the importance of the legal technology come in how to make some routine parts of the job more automated, but and to free some time. I mean the time that is required to get a better knowledge of the business, to think outside the box. To be a proper business partner. So that, I think in the way it operates, it has been a massive change. Also, as Sam was mentioning, all the with all this ESG influence and importance right now, I think both the GC and the legal teams are an important advisor in respect of all the changes that need to be implemented in companies. And they are, a good place to be sponsors of sustainability, and that is also a shift that I've, at least internally, is very noticeable with the team.
And Sam, if you were advising a general counsel in a business, how do you think they can get the most out of their external lawyers? What are the things that they can do to effectively squeeze the most value out of their lawyers?
Look, I think the most effective relationships I have, and I think it's the same for almost all partners, is where you are a partnership with the legal team, and that's recognizing your place in the partnership, which is to try and take, help where you can, take pressure off legal teams, provide good service, think ahead, effectively deliver, etc. And the other is to try and be people who understand a business, are forward thinking, and can have open, good communications and discussions with the general counsel and the legal team. There's nothing better than where you've got two teams set up who work really well together, who know when the client would like you to be is just looking to bounce an idea or talk through something, it's not something where people want to spend money or do whatever. It's literally just, okay, well, let's think about this. Do you have any ideas? Have you seen this? That kind of transfer of knowledge, knowing when that is part of the relationship, or knowing when it's, well, look, actually, we've got this big piece of work over here. My team's really stretched. I'd love it if you could get the right people to help out who've done it before, can think ahead, solve my problems for me, give me the questions I need to answer, and get on with it and do it. And I think if you can get that open communication and balance right, it means you can have a relationship where both sides come away thinking, okay, this is good value for both of us. Basically, I'm sure from Olga's perspective, it's thinking, I've got a great relationship. I value what these people are doing. When they're spending my money, they're treating it as my money, and they're spending it wisely. And they're good custodians of my business, and I value what they're doing.
And I mean, if you look at something like renewables, I mean, with the figures of the amount of money pouring into it, there's going to be an awful lot of legal work that comes out of the renewables industry for lawyers from a whole range of different practice areas. If you were advising someone who wanted to build a practice within the sector, Sam, what do you think the things a lawyer should be doing to develop a renewables practice?
So my personal view, and this will vary depending on who you answer, but my personal view is on the legal side, start with your legal skills. You will specialize and develop a sort of love for a sector or a passion for a business later, but fundamentally what you're being asked to do is advise on the law. So start with good fundamental basic legal skills. You can layer on top of that commerciality, you can layer on top of that an understanding of the business, but start with proper foundations and move on from there.
Okay. And from Olga, from your side, what are you looking for in an external counsel? What does someone have to do to impress you as an external advisor?
I would say, to start with, as Sam was saying, I mean, the vast knowledge or the expertise, I take it as a given. No? When I really hired a top firm, is at the start of what I'm expecting. I would say the ability to see the long-term picture. So our relationships are normally built not only in doing one deal, but we look for counsel that share our values, and are willing to invest time and effort in the long-term relationship with us. And this means also having a commercial approach, in the deal doing. The ability to bring practical solutions is essential for me and for this company. Has a lot of very complex legal content. I'm looking for someone that I can trust will fight in my corner, and who's really passionate actually about what they do, and also about what we do. Cubico has a very clear strategy and key drivers, and having legal counsel that understands that and buy into what we are trying to do, and is a real partner. That is something that I value tremendously. Also, in our case, our company is hugely fast-paced. So having a counsel that can support us at the speed we drive at, it is essential. And of course, obviously, flexibility on fees and be able to be innovative, in that respect as well. But it's great to work with partners that will share the same excitement, that we do have on doing things properly and in this sector.
We ask every guest on the podcast 2 questions. The first of which is, what's the best bit of careers advice you've been given, and who gave it to you? Sam.
So I was given, and I can't remember who gave it to me when I started, but it's to do something that you love, enjoy what you do, because it's a virtuous circle. The more you enjoy it, the better you get at it. The better you get at it, the more you enjoy it. So make sure, don't do something that's forced. Make sure you're passionate about it, and everything will follow that.
That's very solid.
Thanks, Tom.
From me, well, it's difficult to give like groundbreaking advice to this question. But I would say, and something that has worked for me personally very well, is don't be afraid of stepping out of your comfort zone. Don't be afraid of taking risks and learn. It's all about learning. Never stop learning. At the end, you will find that normally people regret more not having done or tried things than the opposite, that having done it. So that is probably the best piece of advice that I got that has driven my career, and I'm pretty happy with it, and that I would share with our audience.
And it applies for anyone, right? Whether you're a trainee or whether you're a partner. Like, I find probably learned more in the last 2 or 3 years than I did in the 5 years in the run up to that. I think when you first start your career, you bring so much in, then you sort of can almost hit a sort of plateau where you think you know what you're doing, and that's when you've got to realize you need to start learning again, because you don't.
Exactly.
And the second question we ask every guest is to name their GOAT lawyer. So just again, for people who haven't listened before, who are not familiar with sporting and acronyms, GOAT is the greatest of all time. And we're looking to bring a compendium of real and fictional, alive and dead lawyers who our guests feel are the greatest lawyer of all time for them. So you've had a week or so to mull it over. Sam, who'd get your nod?
So showing my age, I've been through the cast and characters of LA Law, of Suits, of Freshfields, of Latham. But I think I'm gonna have to go super cheesy. And even though he doesn't listen to podcasts, I'm gonna go with my dad was a lawyer, so I'm gonna go with my dad.
That's very. We can always. Is he on LinkedIn? We can send a link.
If he's on LinkedIn, it will be a miracle, and you can quote me on that.
I'll send him one of those things. You should set up a LinkedIn account.
It'll have to be in. If it's not in hard copy, it's not getting there. Exactly.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sam. How about you, Olga?
Well, I guess if you were to ask my teenage daughter, she will instantly tell you that that has to be Annalise Keating, right? She's totally fascinated by this character, in the TV series. When thinking about it, and I unfortunately I couldn't think about it for a week, but I mean, there's so many people, and to find someone specifically, that I could say that is the greatest of all time. Well, I was struggling a bit, and I decided to go with an answer that I think relates more with me, and it's talk about a collective instead of a person, and talk about these lawyers that anonymously and relentlessly work towards defending basic human rights, now and in the past, and that sometimes at a very little reward, but for themselves, but that they make a difference to people's life.
That is a very noble suggestion, and we will put them as we'll let them in the annals of the GOAT lawyers as a collective rather than as an individual.
So sorry for being unconventional, but
it's good. Like it.
I think that's absolutely fine, and I think that's been unfortunately we are not far away from being out of time, but let's finish by saying a massive thank you to Cubico's Olga Garcia, to Latham's Sam Newhouse for joining the podcast. That was a great insight on such a cool area of the economy that I think is going to be an absolute one of the really, really interesting bits of the next 20 to 30 years. So thank you both very much for giving all those questions your thought and consideration, and coming up with some brilliant anecdotes and advice. Before we go, if you like what you've heard today, please hit subscribe. give us a like or a share on LinkedIn. It really does make a big difference in terms of the number of people that hear it. Thanks for joining us, and look forward to seeing you on the next episode.